Long, long ago, in a time before the world knew fences, before trees had owners, and before greed had learned to disguise itself with a smile, there was a land called Luigi. This was the forest of plenty. Here, the air was pure, the water ran clean, and the trees overflowed with fruit. Life was simple, and the animals lived in harmony, trusting one another completely. Food was abundant for all. But even in this paradise, the elders whispered a single, solemn warning, a caution against a creeping shadow of greed. They knew that greed, if left unchecked, has the power to turn even the greatest abundance into a source of suffering and despair. This is the story of one such animal, a creature known to all as Monkey. It's a tale of how his simple refusal to let go, his inability to release his grasp, would alter the course of his life, and the lives of all his kind, forever. Monkey was a beloved figure in the forest of Luigi. He was clever, and oh, so playful. His antics brought laughter to even the grumpiest of beasts. He was a master climber, scaling the tallest trees with a speed that left others in awe. He could mimic any voice, a talent he used to playfully trick even the wisest old animals of the forest. But for all his charm and wit, Monkey had a glaring weakness, a deep-seated flaw that overshadowed his many gifts. He wanted everything he saw. His desire was a bottomless pit. If he spotted a piece of fruit, he immediately craved more. If he managed to grab one, his mind was already scheming how to get two. And once he had two, he would never, ever let them go. The elders, with their wisdom gathered over many seasons, saw this growing problem and tried to guide him. Monkey, the old, slow tortoise once said to him in his gravelly voice, "The greatest wisdom is knowing when to let go." Monkey just threw his head back and laughed, a loud, carefree sound that echoed through the trees. Let go? He scoffed. Why would anyone let go in a land of such plenty? He simply couldn't understand. To him, abundance meant taking as much as he possibly could. At the very heart of the sprawling forest of Luigi, there stood a tree unlike any other. It was a magnificent, ancient tree known as the Olu fruit tree. Its branches reached for the sky, and its leaves whispered secrets to the wind. The fruits that grew on this tree were special, imbued with a magic that sustained the entire forest. Just one of these shimmering, golden fruits was enough to feed an animal for an entire day, satisfying its hunger completely. Two fruits could comfortably feed a whole family. It was an unspoken rule, a sacred tradition, that the animals would visit the tree, pluck only what they needed for that day, and leave the rest for others. This was the way of Luigi, a system built on respect and shared prosperity. But Monkey, driven by his insatiable wants, refused to play by this rule. Every time he visited the Olu fruit tree, it was a spectacle of pure greed. He would stuff his hands full, cram his mouth until his cheeks bulged, and even use his long, prehensile tail to crow around more. Just one more, he'd mutter to himself, his eyes darting around, always seeking the next prize. He saw the tree not as a shared gift, but as his personal treasure chest, and he was determined to claim every last gem. One season, a subtle change began to creep through the forest. The elders, with their keen eyes, were the first to notice. The vibrant, life-giving fruits of the Olu fruit tree were dwindling at an alarming rate. A sense of unease settled over the community. A meeting was called. All the animals gathered under the shade of the great baobab. Lion, with his deep, commanding voice that carried the weight of authority, stood before the assembly. "We must remember the balance," he warned, his golden eyes sweeping over the crowd. "Take only what you need. The forest provides for those who respect its generosity." Every head nodded in agreement, a silent promise to honor the old ways. Monkey was there, of course, nodding along with everyone else, his face a mask of sincerity. But while his head bobbed up and down, his heart was deaf to the warning. The words of the lion were just noise to him, a temporary obstacle to his desires. That very night, under the cloak of darkness and a sliver of a moon, Monkey crept back to the Olu fruit tree, his heart pounding with a selfish thrill. "I will take them all," he whispered into the silent air, his eyes gleaming. "I'll take everything before the others even wake up." He saw this not as theft, but as a clever strategy to get ahead. But what Monkey didn't know, what no one in Luigi knew, was that a new danger had silently slipped into their sanctuary. Hunters, men from a world beyond the forest's edge, had arrived. And with their arrival, they brought their cunning and their traps. Near the base of the mighty olu fruit tree, they had devised a clever snare. They carved a small hole into a sturdy gourd, just wide enough for an open hand to slip inside. But the opening was designed with a cruel trick. Once a hand was inside and clenched into a fist, it was impossible to pull out. Monkey, blinded by his greed and haste, scrambled down the trunk of the great tree. He saw the gourd, and inside, he saw a pile of the most perfect, gleaming olu fruits he had ever laid eyes on. Without a second thought, he plunged his hand into the hole. His fingers closed around a fistful of the sweet, precious fruit. A triumphant grin spread across his face. But when he tried to pull his hand out, it was stuck fast. Panic surged through him. He tugged and pulled, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps, but the gourd held firm. It was then that a small voice, perhaps the whisper of the wind or the voice of his own conscience, seemed to murmur, "Let go." But Monkey refused to listen. "My fruit," he cried out, his voice filled with desperation and defiance. He couldn't bear the thought of losing his prize. Just then, a new sound cut through the quiet of the night. The crackle of twigs. The low murmur of human voices. Footsteps were approaching. The hunters were returning. A wave of pure, cold fear washed over Monkey, shaking his small body from head to toe. The choice was suddenly terrifyingly clear, his prize or his life. Still, he couldn't bring himself to release the fruit. His greed was so deeply ingrained, it battled against his most basic instinct for survival. "If I let go, I lose," the frantic thought screamed in his mind. "This is mine." He could feel the ground vibrate as the footsteps grew closer. Sweat poured down his temples, his hand trembled violently inside the gourd, his knuckles white from his unyielding grip. The hunters were almost upon him. At the very last possible second, as the shadow of a man fell over him, a primal instinct finally broke through the fog of his greed. Monkey opened his hand. He let go of the fruit. In that instant, his hand slipped free. With a screech of terror and relief, he darted up the tree and vanished into the high canopy, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had escaped, but the terrifying lesson of that night was burned into his memory forever. From that day forward, something inside Monkey changed. The playful, carefree trickster was gone, replaced by a creature haunted by a memory. He never again released food easily. The trauma of the trap had rewired his brain. Now, when you see a monkey, you'll notice he eats while clutching another piece of food tightly in his other hand or foot. He sleeps with his treasures held close. He will fight fiercely to keep what he has, no matter how small. His grip is a constant, physical reminder of the night his greed nearly cost him everything. The fear of losing, the memory of that terrible choice, has been passed down through generations. And so, the next time you see a monkey gripping its food with such intensity, remember this story. Remember the forest of Luigi and the night that one monkey learned a lesson he could never forget. The moral of this tale is a powerful one. Greed is a trap, a cage that locks you in long before it destroys you. It promises more but delivers only fear and captivity. True freedom, true survival, often lies in knowing when to let go. Because sometimes, the very thing you cling to so desperately today might be the exact thing that holds you captive tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more tales and wisdom from around the world. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay wise and let go of what holds you back.